The last thing I felt was heat. Not the gentle kind that crawls from a campfire and settles into your bones, but the violent furnace breath of something ancient and angry turning air into knives. Stone screamed as it cracked, metal sang as it warped. And somewhere in the chaos, a sound that didn't belong, a child's cry, thin and terrified, swallowed and spat back by thunder. My hands moved before my thoughts did. I had been running toward the exit with everyone else, miners, caravan guards, three smugglers who had suddenly discovered religion when the ceiling started to fall. We were a river of panic, boots slapping wet rock, shoulders shoving, lungs burning. The tunnel behind us pulsed orange as the creature's breath licked through the chamber like a living tide. Then I heard the cry again. It wasn't human, too sharp around the edges like glass tapping glass, but it was fear plain as blood. And it came from the wrong direction. I stumbled, turned, and saw it between two fallen beams, a small shape trapped in the debris, wings pinned, scales the color of deep river stone shot through with faint veins of gold. Its eyes were too big for its head, shining in the dark. It wasn't a monster. It was a child, if a child could have claws and a tail and a heart that hammered loud enough to hear over collapsing rock. Behind it, the air shimmered. The big one was coming. "Move," someone shouted at me. A shoulder slammed into mine, almost knocking me down. "Leave it, leave it." The words made sense in the language of survival, in the language of numbers, in the language that said one life is not worth many, but it wasn't one life, not to it, not to me. Suddenly, I dropped my pack and ran back into the furnace. The heat hit like a wall, smoke burned my eyes. The chamber ahead was a wide cavern with a vein of glowing ore running through it like a wound, and above something vast shifted in the haze, wings the size of sails, a silhouette with horns like spears. The adult dragon's breath had ignited pockets of gas in the rock. Fire blossomed in brief, hungry flowers. I slid on loose stone, tore my palms on shattered crystal, and shoved at the beam trapping the hatchling. It didn't budge. It weighed more than my body, more than my will. The hatchling thrashed, but weakly. It was running out of time. "Hey," I rasped, voice raw. "Hey, look at me." Its eyes locked on mine, frantic and intelligent in a way that made my stomach lurch. Not animal, not mindless, someone. I wedged my shoulder under the beam and pushed. The world narrowed to pain, muscles screamed. My spine felt like it was being twisted into wire. The beam shifted just enough. The hatchling sucked in a breath and tried to pull its wing free. Blood, dark and almost black, slicked the scales at the joint. The adult dragon roared. The sound wasn't heard so much as it was felt, a vibration that slammed through bone and made my teeth chatter. The cavern ceiling trembled, dust rained down. The creature's eyes flashed from the smoke, molten gold, furious, fixed on me. I didn't have a weapon big enough to matter. My sword was a toy to it. My crossbow was back with the others, left behind in my pack. What I had was my body. I shoved again, grunting, and the beam slid far enough for the hatchling to wriggle free with a wet scrape. It tumbled out, wings dragging, claws skittering on stone. "Go," I shouted, because humans are idiots who tell a dragon to go like it's a dog. The hatchling hesitated. It looked back at me, then at the adult. Its throat pulsed as it swallowed. The fear in its eyes shifted into something else, confusion maybe, or the first seed of comprehension. The adult dragon's head pushed through the smoke, jaws opening. Heat washed over me. The air in front of its mouth rippled like water. My mind did something strange. It didn't show me my life flashing. It showed me a simple picture, the hatchling's small body pinned under the beam, roasted because nobody wanted to lose time. The hatchling's eyes met mine. I stepped between it and the approaching flame. The first blast took the world apart. Pain arrived so fast it became a kind of silence. Light swallowed everything. I felt my skin peel and my lungs seize and the iron taste of my own blood turning to steam. My legs buckled, but I stayed up for one breath, one defiant, futile breath, because the hatchling needed time to crawl away. Then my body finally admitted what my mind had already accepted. This was the end. As I fell, my last sight was the hatchling stumbling toward a crack in the far wall, wings dragging, tail leaving a smear of blood like ink. It paused once, just once, and looked back. I tried to smile. Everything went dark. I expected nothing after that. No dreams, no light, no afterlife I could bargain with. Instead, I woke to cold. Not the cold of a winter night, but the clean, sharp cold of high altitude, air so thin it felt like it was slicing my lungs. I gasped and sat up, clutching at my chest. It was whole, no burns, no blistered skin, no ragged holes where fire had eaten through muscle. I ran my hands over my arms, my torso, my legs, solid, intact, trembling only from shock. I was lying on smooth black stone, polished to a mirror sheen. Above me was a vaulted ceiling that glittered faintly, not with stars but with embedded crystals, each one humming with a low, steady light. The air tasted like iron and rain. The room was vast, circular, and at its edges stood figures that made my heart trip. Dragons, not the feral, smoky silhouette from the cavern. These were something else, taller, sleeker, armored in scales that caught the crystal light like hammered metal. Some wore plates of obsidian and silver etched with runes. Others had cloaks made of overlapping feathers or chains of gemstones draped across their chests. Their wings were folded with the precision of blades sheathed. Their eyes were all on me, and there were too many, a ring of guardians, a tribunal, an execution line. My instincts shouted at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. The stone beneath me was warm now, as if responding to my panic, but not enough to comfort. One dragon stepped forward. This one was pale, scales a deep pearl color with veins of blue. Its horns were long and swept back, and around its throat hung a collar of braided gold that looked more like a symbol than jewelry. When it spoke, the words formed in my mind, not my ears. Human, I flinched, hands raising without my permission. If this is a dream, I said hoarsely, it's a nasty one. The dragon's expression didn't change. Its face was still regal, but there was a tension around the eyes that reminded me of soldiers watching a weapon they don't understand. This is not dream, this is the Hall of Wardens. A low rumble went through the circle, murmurs or perhaps a shared thought. Another guardian stepped forward, scales black as soot, eyes like green fire. Its claws clicked against the stone. He smells of death, it projected, the thought edged with disdain, yet he stands, trickery. The pearl-scaled one's gaze sharpened, not trickery. Binding, binding, I echoed. My voice sounded small in the cavernous hall. A third dragon leaned in, enormous, its scales the red of dried blood. Its wings were marked with scars, old burns, and the missing notch of a battle-worn membrane. When it projected its thought, it felt like a hammer striking a bell inside my skull. You were consumed by flame, I swallowed. Yeah, that tends to happen when you stand in front of a dragon. The guardian's attention tightened. A few tails lashed, restrained irritation. The pearl-scaled warden, because that was what it felt like, the one with authority, tilted its head. You stood before Vark of the Ash Rift. You interposed your body between his breath and a hatchling of royal blood. Royal blood, my stomach sank. Of course, the universe had a sense of humor. I didn't just save a child, I saved a politically inconvenient child. I didn't know, I said quickly. I didn't know it was royal, I didn't know anything. I heard it crying and you returned, the warden pressed while others fled. A memory stabbed, shoulders shoving, boots running, voices shouting, leave it. I lifted my chin because the choice still felt right, even under the weight of those eyes. It was trapped. The black-scaled guardian's thought cut in sharp as a blade. Humans barter life for gain. What did you seek? Gold, favor, a claim upon our kingdom? My laugh came out brittle. I sought to not watch a child burn. Silence. It wasn't empty. It was heavy, as if the hall itself was waiting to see whether my answer would fracture. The red-scaled guardian's eyes narrowed. You claim no reward? I didn't even think I'd survive, I snapped. Then softer, because anger wouldn't help me in a room full of apex predators, I didn't do it for reward. The warden watched me for a long moment. Then it extended one claw and traced a symbol in the air. The crystal lights dimmed and shifted, gathering toward the center like moths. A circle of light formed on the stone between us, and within it an image bloomed: smoke, fire, shattered rock. It was the cavern, it was me. I watched myself run back into the flame, watched my hands shove the beam, watched the hatchling wriggle free, watched my body step in front of the adult dragon's breath. From this angle, I saw the hatchling's face as it looked back. I saw its pupils narrow, not from light but from something like recognition. The image froze on the moment the fire struck me. A ripple passed through the guardians. Some looked away. Others stared harder, as if trying to find the hidden lever, the secret calculation. The black-scaled one's contempt faltered, replaced by uncertainty. Why would a lesser being choose death? I should have said something grand, something poetic, something that sounded like prophecy. Instead, I said the truth, because sometimes you don't get to be the person who walks away. The warden's gaze softened by a fraction. Not kindness, dragons didn't do kindness like humans did, but the shift of someone reassessing a known equation because a variable had refused to behave. Your death was witnessed by the hatchling. Her blood carried the sight into the royal memory. The kingdom knows what you did, royal memory. I didn't understand, but I understood enough. This act had already become a story, and stories were dangerous. And that's why I'm here, I asked. Because I'm inconvenient. The red-scaled guardian's thought rumbled. You are here because you should be Ash, yet you are not. The warden's claw lowered and the light circle collapsed into nothing. The hatchling's fear called, the ancient pact answered. You were drawn across the boundary between life and death by the same force that binds our wardens. My mouth went dry. You resurrected me. Not resurrected, the warden corrected. Bound, the word sat like a stone in my gut. To what? All of their eyes seemed to brighten at once, as if the hall itself had leaned in. To her, a tremor ran down my spine. The child, Princess Sarith, the warden projected, and the name carried weight like a crown made of gravity. Heir of the Ember Throne, great, I had died for a princess. The guardians shifted and a path opened through the circle. From the far side of the hall, a small figure approached on unsteady feet. She was bigger than in the cavern, or maybe it was the distance making the memory lie. Her wings were bandaged at the joint with cloth that shimmered faintly with runes. Her scales were the same river stone gray with gold veins. Her eyes were still too big for her head, but now they held something other than raw fear. She stopped a few steps away from me, head tilted. I didn't know whether to bow, kneel, run, cry, laugh. Hi, I said, because I remained in every realm painfully human. The princess's mind brushed mine, tentative as a fingertip on a bruise. You hurt. The words weren't accusation, they were observation, child simple and somehow more devastating than any threat. I swallowed. Yeah, I whispered, but you're alive, that's what matters. Her pupils widened, her tail twitched as if trying to decide between hiding and striking. You did not run. No, I said, I didn't. The princess's gaze dropped to my hands, still scraped from the beam. Then she looked back up at me and something ancient flickered behind her eyes, a shadow of the royal memory the warden had mentioned. You smelled like fear, she said, and then puzzled, but you moved anyway. I couldn't help it. My throat tightened. That's kind of the point. A low murmur rolled through the guardians, a vibration that made the crystal lights tremble. The black-scaled guardian stepped forward again, but its thought was different now, less contempt, more calculation. If he is bound to the princess, he is a liability. Humans break, humans betray. The red-scaled one's eyes flashed, or humans endure what would shatter others. The warden lifted a claw and silence fell. The binding has rules, it projected, and I felt those rules like invisible chains tightening around my ribs. His life is tethered to hers. If she dies, he dies. If he turns against her, the bond burns him from within, if she commands his death. The warden let the thought trail off, and I understood anyway. I stared at the princess, who stared back with a child's blunt honesty. So I'm your guardian now, I said quietly. The princess blinked. You are mine. The words hit wrong, like a collar snapping shut. My instincts recoiled. I had died making a choice, not signing a contract. The warden's eyes narrowed as if anticipating my resistance. You were chosen. The pact does not choose lightly. I didn't consent, I said, the edge in my voice sharper than wisdom would advise in a room full of dragons. A ripple of surprise went through them, true surprise, as if consent was a concept that had never been part of the equation. The princess's mind pressed softly against mine again. I did not mean owned. She hesitated, and the hesitation felt like someone learning language in real time. I meant connected. My anger faltered. It wasn't the child's fault. She hadn't bound me out of greed. She had called out in terror, and something older than both our species had answered in the only way it knew. I exhaled slowly. Connected, I repeated. Okay, connected I can handle. The princess's shoulders eased, the tiniest loosening of tension. Her tail curled closer to her body like a shield. Will you run now, she asked, and the question was so small, so afraid of disappointment, that it cut deeper than any dragon claw. I looked at the ring of guardians, powerful, watchful, ready to judge the first wrong move. Then I looked back at her. No, I said, not from you. The warden watched the exchange with an intensity that felt like reading a new text written in a language it had never expected to encounter. Then you will be tested, it projected, not by flame, not by fang, by the weight of our kingdom. The hall shifted, literally. The stone beneath us hummed, and the crystals overhead rearranged their light into patterns that made my vision swim. The guardians spread out, opening the center of the hall like a stage. The red-scaled guardian stepped into the open space. Its wings unfurled with a sound like sails catching wind. The Ember Throne is contested, it projected. There are those who would see the princess dead to claim the crown through ash and blood. Of course there were. Power invited knives. Our wardens are sworn to protect the line, the warden added. But we are also sworn to the law, and the law does not know what you are. Human, I said a little bitterly. No, the warden's thought pressed harder, a paradox, a creature that chooses death for a hatchling that is not its kin. Such a creature disrupts the old measures. The black-scaled guardian's tail lashed. Disruption is danger. The red-scaled one's eyes burned. Disruption is sometimes salvation. I understood then my act had not just saved a child, it had exposed a crack in the dragon world, a place where their certainty didn't reach. The princess stepped closer until her bandaged wing brushed my arm, warm and real. Her mind touched mine again, steadier now. They are afraid of you, she observed. I'm afraid of them, I muttered. A flicker of amusement, genuine, childlike, sparked in her mind. Good, then you are not stupid. I huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. The warden raised its claw again. The first test is simple. Speak your intention before the wardens. What do you want? The question landed like a trap. In my old world, a man like me wanted coin, a safe bed, maybe a little peace. Here, those wants seemed laughably small. I looked at the princess. Her eyes were fixed on me, waiting, as if my answer might decide whether the world was safe or not. I turned back to the guardians and spoke carefully. I want her to live, I said, not as a symbol. Not as a prize, as a person, as a child who gets to grow up without being hunted for the shape of her blood. A low silence followed, thick with implication. My words had stepped onto political ground, I could feel it. The black-scaled guardian's thought came again, but it wasn't contempt now, it was wary curiosity. And what of yourself, human? I met its gaze. If I'm bound to her, then my survival is part of her safety, so I want to live too, not as your property, not as your tool. As a guardian who chose the job, even if the bond forced my hand. The warden's eyes narrowed slightly, studying. You demand autonomy. I demand dignity, I corrected. If you want me to stand between her and fire again, you don't get to treat me like a leash on a collar. The ring of guardians reacted, some with anger, some with astonishment, one with what felt like reluctant respect. The princess's mind brushed mine, warm and fierce. He speaks like a cliff, she sent, and I didn't know if that was praise or warning. The warden held the silence until it became unbearable, then lowered its claw. Very well. Dignity will be negotiated, not granted. Dragons did nothing freely. But it was more than I expected. The crystal lights brightened again, and the hall's air seemed to loosen, as if the kingdom itself had taken its first careful breath around this new, strange arrangement. The warden's thought softened, not kindness but acknowledgement. You died as a shield. If you are to stand again, you will learn what you are shielding her from. You will learn our ways, our enemies, our laws, and you will be watched. I figured, I said. The red-scaled guardian stepped back, wings folding. If he fails, the bond will burn him. If he succeeds, the thought didn't finish. It didn't need to. If I succeeded, a human would have a place among the most powerful guardians in the Dragon Kingdom, not by conquest, not by blood, but by an act that made no strategic sense. That was the true disruption. That was what frightened them. The princess looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd woken, the hall didn't feel like a courtroom. It felt like the edge of a road. Will it hurt again? She asked. I didn't pretend not to understand. She meant fire. She meant sacrifice. She meant the moment her life had hung on my choice. I took a slow breath of the cold mountain air and let it fill my lungs. Maybe, I admitted, but if it does, it won't be because you weren't worth it. Her eyes shone brighter, and something in the bond between us tightened, not like a chain, but like a knot tied on purpose. The warden turned away, and the guardians parted, making space for us to leave the Hall of Wardens. As I stood and took my first steps into the Dragon Kingdom, I realized something that would haunt me later. When the politics sharpened and the assassins came, and the tests became more than words in a crystal-lit chamber. I had died once as a shield for a child I didn't know. Now I would have to live as a shield for a kingdom that didn't yet know what to do with a human who wouldn't act like a tool. And somewhere behind us, in the quiet hum of ancient crystals, the story of my choice was already spreading through memory, through rumor, through fear. Because nothing terrified the powerful more than proof that someone could stand in front of fire, not for glory, but for the simple, stubborn refusal to let the innocent pay the price. That was humanity's strange gift, not strength, not magic, just the decision to be the wall. And walls, once built, change the shape of every battlefield that comes after.